We're in the Bavli, Maseches Gittin, Daf Mem Beis Amud Beis, 11 lines on the top of the page by Eiba'il. Eiba'il, they asked the question. Was asked the question. So we already discussed how many times, according to most opinions, let's say the master frees the slave, he still has to give him a get. He still has to give him a document of freedom. So let's say he freed him, but he still has to have the get shichur. What happens when there's a knas? Let's say an ox killed the master.
What does mu'ukav mean? Mu'ukav.
Someone who, what's holding him back is the get shichur. He has to be freed, but he still does, what's holding him back means is a get shichur. From being fully free is a get shichur. So he's like halfway free, basically. He can't be enslaved by his master anymore, but he's not fully free. He can't marry yet, for example. So what happens if an ox kills him? Yes, knas or in the knas? Does the master get the knas, the 30 shekels, 30 seller, or not? That's the question. So the Gemara says, "Kesef shleishim shkalim yitin la'adoinav rachman abayla v'adinu." It says, the Torah says, you should give it to his adoinav, to his master, the 30 shekel, and he's not his master anymore. Given the mechusa get shichur, it's interesting to hear we use the word mechusa before we use the word mu'ukav. Here, because the get shichur is missing, maybe he's still called the master. So what do you guys think?
He doesn't have the gate shichur, right?
I think the Adon does not get it because he's holding it back. He's not being right by holding it back to let his servant go. So why should he get benefit from that?
No, maybe he just didn't get. He was planning on doing it, and then they were on the way to Bezdin, and the ox scored him. I don't think it means he's doing it deliberately. It could be that he's doing it deliberately, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. That's not our question. Okay, interesting. So let's see what the Gemara says. Obviously, we have to bring from Brises and so on. Toshma, come in here. Hey, Miss Misha Chetzi Eved v'Chetzi Ben Charen. Let's say an ox killed. So we have exactly this case. If an ox killed somebody who's Chetzi, he's half free and half a slave. What happens with the knas? You give half the knas to the master and half to the Yersh.
Is this slave owned by two people?
He was owned by two people, and one of them freed half of him.
Oh, one freed, but the other didn't. Okay.
So you give 50 to the rabbi and 50 to the Yersh. My love, Mishnah Acharona. Probably we're talking about the Mishnah Acharona. What's the Mishnah Acharona? The Beis Hillel agrees with Beis Shammai that the master has to free him. He just didn't get around to it yet. So here we see that even though he has to free him, but he didn't get around to it, still he gets his half. So too, if he's fully owns him and he has to free him, but he didn't get around to it, they'll get the knas. That's what we want to give as a riot. So the Gemara says, look, Commissioner Rishayna, we could just say we're talking about Mishnah Rishayna before we still agree to Beis Shammai. And he doesn't have to free him, so that's why he gets half. But in a case where he has to free him, like Makdish and Mafkir, like Rashi says, in such a case, he wouldn't get it. It's only where he doesn't have to. Maybe you'll say the Bryce is talking about he doesn't have to free him. He owns half because they were partners. He owns half because they're partners. But in the case where he freed him, he just didn't do the shtar. There, he's not going to get anything. So you don't have a ride from there. Don't forget, we could have a case also where you free half your slave. So that would also be, if you only free half, if you're able to free half your slave, obviously you would have to free the other half. Eventually, you would have to free the other half. Whatever. Okay. Fine. So the Gemara goes on. We have another raya. I lost my spot. Oh, here. Toshma, come in here. What happens if you basically there's 24 Rashi Avarim that you go free. If you knock out your Eved's, the tips of his limbs, he goes free. We learn from Saras. So let's say he knocked out two limbs, his tooth and his eye. So those are mentioned in the pasuk. His tooth and his eye. His tooth and his eye are mentioned in the pasuk. So if he knocked out both of them, what happens? So the Gemara says, Yoitze b'shinai. When he knocked out his tooth, he goes free. And he pays him the value of his eye. If you're going to say that in the stage between him going free and him being actually freed with the shtar, we'll go to Rabbi. If other people are hitting him, whatever the damage is going to go to Rabbi, the nezek, or if they kill him, and you're going to say the master injures him, he's going to have to give it to the slave. It doesn't make sense. Oh, doesn't make sense, right? It's a good question. It's a good raya. Elamai, it's a raya that the rabbi doesn't get the knas, and that's why if he injures his eved, he has to pay him. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that he would have to pay him. I mean, you could differentiate logically that if he himself injures him, of course he should. Other people injure him, it's a different story. Okay, that's what I would say, but nobody asked my opinion. So the Gemara says, "Dilma commando omer einay tzorach." Maybe that's because in this case alone, there's an opinion that you don't have to have a shtar shechor, where your limbs get knocked out. It must have been quite a blow to lose his tooth and his eye. Maybe it's two separate blows.
Yes.
You don't need a shtar in these two cases. The Tanya b'chula never yotzim in the chedus, and all the tips of his 24 limbs that have tips. If you knock him out, you go free. V'tzorach get shichur mirabba, and you need to get shichur the Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Meir says you don't need. So maybe it's according to Rabbi Meir that you don't even need a shtar shichur. But if you would need one, that would be a different story. Then Taka, if he injures him and he knocks out his eye, he won't have to pay him, which is hard to understand, honestly. Rabbi Lazar says you need to have a shtar shichur even if you knock out the tooth and the eye, the 24 limbs. Rabbi Tarfon says you don't need. Rabbi Kiva says you need a shtar shichur. Those Rashi says there's 24 limbs that are not that don't become tummy and saras because you can't see the whole thing at once. They're considered movement shebagoli. They're considered also for an eved to go free. Hamachriin. Those who weighed the words of the Chacham, they would decide who the halacha is like. Oimrim, they said, neither in Divri Rabbi Tarfon became behind. Rabbi Tarfon seems correct when it comes to Shein V'ayin, the tooth and the eye. Because it says it clearly in Torah. Rabbi Kiva b'shayvrim. Kiva, however, is correct by other limbs because it's only a fine. Knas, that you have to free him. Knas hakroy kodushin. It's from the klal u'prata klal that we have in Maseches Kedushin. So what do you mean it's a knas? Because it's being expounded by the chacham, it's different. That's a very interesting concept. So even though you have klal u'prata klal, which is one of the shlosh midas shaturn deshas bam, it's not the same as if it's written directly in the Torah. In a place where it's written directly in the Torah, you don't even need a shtar to go free. You go free right away if he knocks out your tooth or your eye. But if you're knocked out by your tooth and your eye, then you don't need a shtar. Tosfos actually has a very good explanation. He says like this: what are we worried about? What's the difference? Like I said, if it's from the Shlosh Midas Shaturn Deshben, how can you differentiate between Shein V'ayin and Kol Prat Klal? So Rabbeinu Tam explains a beautiful explanation. Rabbeinu Tam, we're worried the master might find him in the marketplace, and he's not going to admit, and he's going to say, "You're my servant." But if you knocked out his eye and his tooth, we're not worried he's going to say such things. It's clearly in the pasuk. Everybody knows that if you knock out someone's tooth or eye, he goes free. But by the other limbs, and not everyone knows, and it's not clearly in the pasukim, there we're worried he's going to say that. That's why we make sure he gets a shtar. Shein V'ayin, we're not worried because it's so clearly in the pasuk. That's the logic behind why they paskin like Rabbi Tarfon when it comes to Shein V'ayin, but in other cases he doesn't. So our bride said, what were we talking about? Talking about Shein V'ayin. So because talking about Shein V'ayin, he doesn't need a shtar, and that's why he has to pay him the ayin. But in a case where he need a shtar, maybe he won't have to pay him because he didn't give him a shtar yet. Okay. So the Gemara actually doesn't have an answer. There's no answer. It's in the Rambam. Probably because there's no answer, we'll say the money is mitzvah mechavel of Arayah. Let me check. Let me check actually what the halacha is, because the Gemara doesn't answer. It's interesting. What? One second, I'm going to check it up in Sefaria. Hopefully this won't take too long. It's not loading. And now it's loading. Halacha. Mishnah Torah.
Oh, so you're going by the Rambam.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at what he says about this case that we just learned about. Nizikim. Hilchas Nizkim moment. Here it is. Perkid Aleph. I don't know why it's in English. It's annoying.
Oh. Yes, they do that. Sometimes English, sometimes they have both languages, right? They'll have the Hebrew and the translation.
The Rambam says like this: "B'cholam ma'ukiv get shechur." Anybody who he didn't receive the get, the Eved didn't receive the get, then he was killed. Ein lo knas. There's no knas. Because he doesn't have a master, he has already gone free. So even though our Gemara doesn't have an answer, the Rambam paskins, there's no knas for the Odin. Odin doesn't get it. What would he say in the case of the Odin injuring him? Okay, that's in a different place. I guess we don't have time for that. Ibai lahu, next question in the Gemara. We are up to towards the bottom of the page, about maybe 15 lines on the bottom, middle of the line. There's a little zayin there. Someone who's mukiv get shikhr, he didn't receive his get shikhr yet. His odin was already makdish or mafkir him, but he didn't receive his get shikhr. Can he eat truma or not? If he is odin, if his master is a kohen, kinin kasper rachmana b'aylav kinin kasper. Who it says that he's acquired, he's not acquired anymore. He already freed it. But don't give him the because to get shikhr. Kinin kasper kinin. Maybe he's still called kinin kasper because he didn't get the get. Toshma coming here. Damar Misharsha. Misharsha says like this. Kehenis and he's out of Vlado, but Vlad Shif Chosa. If you have a kehenis that her child got mixed up with the child of her maidservant, it's a disaster. What do you do? They have to come together to the Gerin and get one portion, because we don't give the Avadim by the Gerin themselves because we're worried that people think they're legitimate kohenim. You have to go together with each other. They have to go with each other. No, we don't know who the master is and who the servant is, so they go together. Higdilu, once they get older, Higdilu Taruvis, Meshachman says that they free each other. That way, I guess they can't free each other. You can't free each other before, only when Higdilu. What I don't understand is why you can't do it. Why the master can't do it, why they have to do it themselves. Doesn't say. At least not on this page. So look into that. So what do we see from here? So what do we see from here? That oichlin b'truma. Even though the master doesn't know which one is a servant, so he doesn't have reshus over him. It's similar. It's sort of similar. The master doesn't have reshus over the Eved because he doesn't know which one is the Eved. One of them is his own son. So it's like sort of mu'ukav get shikhr. The get shikhr itself could only happen when he gdilu. I don't understand why the Odin can't just do it from when they're babies. Why can't he just mishachar both of them out tonight? Why they have to do it to each other, I'm not sure. But al kopanim we see, even though the mu'ukav get shikhr, they're allowed to eat truma. Says the Gemara, it's different. Here, there, it's not like you freed them. One of them is really his slave. If Eliyahu and Nova would tell him which one it was, it would be considered kinin kaspa. So therefore, of course, they go together because one of them is for sure a slave. It's not like he's hefker. He's a slave. We just don't know which one it is. One of them is a kohen, so they go together. Here it's different, however. It's lav kinin kaspa. So the Gemara does have an answer. The Gemara says it's lav kini kasper. Can't eat truma in such a case. Ibai lahu. We don't have a brisa that supports it, but logically he's lav kini kasper. Ibai lahu evet shemocher rabba leknas. Let's say it's very interesting. He sold him for the rights of the knas. So how much is a knas if he gets killed? It's the 30 seller. So he says, I don't know if my slave is going to get killed, loyalenu, from an ox. But if he does, or from someone, if he does, I'll sell the rights to you that you collect the money. So how much is such a thing worth? How much would you pay for such a thing? 30. It's a suffix. It's maybe 1% that is going to happen. So maybe you pay 1/100th of the value of the knas. I don't know. You have to estimate. That's why you have the insurance, so to speak. That's what they do. The actuaries, they weigh the chances and so on, and that's how they do the rates of the insurance. So let's say he sold the rights of the knas. Mocher in a mocher. Can you do such a thing or not? Is it a sale or not? This will be a question according to Amir and the Chum, because there's a machlokes. It's a question for Amir. So Amir holds you could sell something which doesn't exist, but it's only the palm trees that there's the Peres dekel. So for sure the dates are going to come. So he'll say Reb Meir will say that you could be makna such a thing, you could sell it because it's for sure going to happen. Well, chances are it's going to happen in most cases, 99%. Here, who says it's going to happen? Who says he's going to be gored? Even if he is going to be gored, how do we know the person who gored him is going to pay? If he's moide, as long as he admits to it, he's potter. So 99.9999% of the knas, all he has to do is be moide, and then he doesn't have to pay it. So why would anybody not be moide? It's almost not fair. Like you kill the evet, and you have to be, as long as you're moide bebezin, you don't have to pay anything. You get away with it. I shouldn't. I'm saying chas v'shalom to complain against the Torah. You have to understand why it's not a monetary payment and it's just a knas, and how you could get away with just being moide. So now we're on Mem Gimel Amud 43a on the top. It's a boy the Rabban. It's also a question according to the Chum. Ad kan lekam Rabban on the Makan Davar Shalom Beleilim can Peres Dekel the Hashtam Yel Leisneu. Peres Dekel don't exist, so they say you can't be maknit. They don't exist right now. Here, however, we can assume the ox that potentially will kill him is around. I mean, theoretically, it might not be around. Who says the ox was born yet? And the servant is certainly around. What would be the din? Amar Abba, Reb Abba, Toshma, come in here. We are currently 5 lines in. It says Vilid Boyes. There's a brisa that analyzes the pasuk about your servants eating truma. It says Vilid Boyes, someone who's born in the household, like a slave that's born. Like Kol Shekain. Oh, Matam Oliver, sorry. Matam Oliver. What is it coming to teach us? If someone is a kinyan kesef, an ever that you buy can eat truma, how much more so the son of your shifcha who was born into servitude, how much more so you could eat? Okay, and if you would just say kinyan kaspa, you say kinyan kesef sheyesh b'shava kesef oichel, maybe he has to have a certain value. If you lead by sheyesh b'shava kesef oichel, so to you lead by has to have a value. How do we know that even if he's not worth anything? Let's say he doesn't have value on the market. How do we know he can still eat? It's hard to imagine how somebody could not have any value. Lead bias is including that even if it doesn't have value. But I know lead bias maybe only lead bias doesn't have to have value. But if you buy a slave, only if he retains his value, could eat the truma. It doesn't have value not. So they put it together. You lead biases marbe, even if he doesn't have a worth. And it also teaches that kinyan kaspa also doesn't have to have a worth. So to kinyan kaspa, even if it doesn't have a worth. How could he not have a worth? Rashi says, if he has a terrible illness that he's afflicted with boils, nobody's going to want to buy him as a slave. Nobody wants to buy a mukashchin as a slave. 99.9% of the cases. If you're going to say that you could sell an eved as, this is a brilliant raya. If you're going to say that an eved that his master sells as a knas is sold, that if someone kills him, the money will go to that person who buys it. According to any opinion, Rabbi Meir or the Chachamim. How can you say that there's an Eved who's valueless? Every Eved has a value. You could sell the rights for the Knas. So it has a certain value. But even so, I mean, I could argue. So Tosfos points out, what do you mean? Same thing. Why you want to have a slave who's sold entirely? He says people won't want to buy him. They don't want such a slave by him, so a mukashchin. But what if you just sell the slave for the rights of the knas? That is a certain value. You could sell the rights of the knas on the slave, even if you don't sell him the gambi. That should be enough to allow him to eat truma. So how could we say we're marbi even someone who doesn't have a value? You always have a slave who has a value. So the Gemara says, yes, you do have a case where there's no knas. In Ika Eved Treifa, you have an Eved who's a Treifa, who's going to die within the year. He doesn't get a knas. They make him kame. He can still serve him until he dies. But manuvel mukashchin, if he's both a Treifa and a manuvel mukashchin, so that's a different story. Then he doesn't have value on the market, plus he does not going to get knas. That could be a case where there's no value. Nevertheless, he's still allowed to eat truma. Okay. So we don't have a raya. We don't have a raya if you could sell an eved for a knas. There's no proof. Paragraph Gimel Mehilchos Mechira Halacha Gimel. Okay, I'll just look it up quickly. Interesting Rambam. Talmud, no, not Talmud, sorry. Halacha, Mishnah Torah, Sefer Kinyan, Hilchos Mechira, Paragraph Gimel. What is the halacha? Halacha Gimel. Rambam says, if you sell your avid for a knas, it's a suffix. We don't know. The Gemara doesn't answer. The Rambam wrote it's a suffix. So what happens? You don't give the knas. You don't have to give the knas over if you made such a sale. Obviously, you should return the money. But if the lekeach is toifus, if he grabs the money of the knas, then he gets to keep it because it's a suffix. The Gemara doesn't have an answer. Okay, another question. Ibai lahu. We're towards the bottom of the skinny lines. Someone who's half slave and half free, that he went ahead and he was mekadesh a free Jewish girl. So he's not allowed to, but he did it. What's the din? If you're going to say you can have a man is allowed to tell a woman, you become mekadesh to half of me, even though there's no such thing, it's as if he's saying, I'm going to have more than one wife. Because she's fit for all of him. That's what we say. We interpret his words to saying, and the guy, the Eved, she's not fit for all of him. She's only fit for the half of him that's free. So maybe there's no kedusha. If you're going to say that if you have a Ben Yisrael who's mekadesh half a woman, it doesn't work because we can't interpret it to say that she's going to have more than one husband. She can't have more than one husband. If he says you're mekadesh half of me, it means he says he wants two wives. But if he tells a woman I'm only mekadesh half of you, it doesn't work. Ain't mekadeshes this sheer bekinyona because he wasn't mekadesh all of her. But here in our case, the Eved didn't leave anything out. He was mekadesh every part of him that he was able to. The half of him that's free. So what's the din? Toshma coming here. If you kill somebody, it says we said already, we brought this brisa before. If an ox gored somebody who's half a slave and half free, what do you do with the knas? Just 30 shekel, 30 selah. You give half to the rabbi and half to the yarshim. If you're going to say that he can't be mekadesh, yarshim minoli, how does he have yarshim? It must be from the fact that we're talking about yarshim that he's able to mekadesh, a brilliant raya. I shouldn't say brilliant raya. All the rayas of the Gemara are brilliant. So I shouldn't say one is more brilliant than the other. When you-
Who has the Yorshins or Yorshin? Are we talking about the slave?
How does
Or
a slave have Yorshim? Exactly. Slave is not allowed to
Exactly.
marry, especially if he's half free. He's only half free. There's no marriage. So where does he have Yorshim?
Yeah.
It must be that he went against the Chacham and he was Mekadosh somebody. So there's a problem, obviously, with the children. But the Kedushin is still Kedushin.
But he can have heirs when he marries a Jewish woman, right? Then they're halachically.
So we want to bring a raya from the fact that we're talking about Yorshim, that he has. Sorry. From the fact that he has Yorshim, it's a raya that b'di'evet, if he gets married, he'll get married. What is the status of the kids? It's complicated, honestly.
Why would you say that, though? But can't you just say that he had a brother?
There's no such thing by slaves. You don't give. There's no Yerusha to your brother.
But he's half free, so the half of him that's free.
But his brothers, even if let's say he gets freed and his brother gets freed, it's as if they're not related, like legally.
Oh, that's right. They're not halachically related, right? Not halachically.
I asked him to take him up with you. When was he ready? He's up at 6 in the morning. He's ready at 8:30. He's going back for 2 hours. And he wants to go back. It can't work. It's a problem about
Okay, let's continue. So there's actually interesting tosfos.
Just one last time. That's with a Garian that there's no relatives. With an Eved also there's no relatives.
By who?
By a Ger there's no relatives. By an Eved also there's no relatives.
By a ger, there's no relatives, and by an eved, there's no relatives. That's true. Yeah, they're both the same. Says Tosfos Tema, the mat toile yorshin bekidushin, v'alei b'nei min apnuya yorshin. Why do we make the yorshin dependent on marriage? For example, if someone has a son from a pnuya, if someone has a son from an unmarried girl, we're in the last place on Mem Gimel. Yorshay, still your son. So why we make it dependent? Why are we saying that if he has Yorshim, Yorshay? Kid Omar Gabe Asar. Kid, oh, got a fly. Very disturbing, very distracting. Sorry, around me. Kid Omar Gabe Asar Koinim. We have a case in Maseches Yivamis. Let's say you have 10 Koinim. Shapira Shechem Mehem Avol. One of them had a child with a woman. We don't know which one of the 10. It's a very unusual case, obviously. I don't know if such a case ever happened. Davlad Shasuki. The child is considered shtuki. What does that mean? We quiet him down from trying to be Yerush from his father. We don't know who his father is. So in a case where you don't know who his father is, and obviously there is no kedushin, doesn't matter. Still, no, so in that case, we also have a case. We also say that if you have a son from a pnuya, over there we say that if you have a son from a pnuya, if you have a son from an unmarried woman, he will be Yerush as long as he knows who the father is. But if he doesn't know who the father is, it's a different story. So then we go on and we say, even if your child is mamash mamzer me'erva, loyalenu, you were with a married woman, you have a child with a married woman, whatever. Yeah, any case of you have a child with an erva, in the case where there's no kedushin, the Gemara tells us in Yivamis, he's your son, which means not that he's legitimate, he's considered a mamzer, but he's still able to inherit you. In this case, it's worse if there's kedushin, but why? It says in Maseches Yivamis that the half of him, which is an Eved, is being with an Ish. So it's better if he's not, if there's no kedushin in a way. I'm not sure I fully understand that. I have to look up the Gemara over there. So what's going on? Why do we make the fact that he's having a son depend on kedushin? Says Tosfos, it doesn't matter if there's kedushin or not. Question is if it's his son, but it's why are we saying for the fact that he's his son, it must be there's a kedushin. Maybe there's no kedushin. Shloimer the Sovar Hashas the Misa the law by Kedushin, and the Gemara holds if there's no Kedushin, it's not going to be his son. Why? Can't compare it to Erva. By Erva, even though he's not able to be Teifas Kedushin with an Erva, still she could have Kedushin La'alma. Let's say it's his sister Leilena or his mother, whatever. She's married. But an Eved who can't marry B'chlal, anyone, we'll say the son cannot be considered his son unless there's Kedushin. If there's a half Kedushin, then his son will be his son. What will be the classification of his son? I don't know. Will be problematic. I would say probably he's a half a slave, maybe his son, but half his son, but he is his son. And the master will free him also? I don't know exactly. So the question is there Kedushin by if he's Mekadesh a woman? What is a huge nafkamina? Is he gonna have to give her a get? Is it, there's a massive, there's a big difference. What's her status if he's Mekadesh a woman, a half a slave? Someone who's half free and half a slave. So going back to the original Raya, the Yomer Kedushin of like Kedushin Yoshim in only. You're gonna say there's no Kedushin, where's he having heirs? It must be there is a Kedushin. So that's why we say half goes to his heirs. We're talking about that it didn't kill him, it only made him mortally ill. When we say heirs, we talk about himself. You give the money to him. Rava says that you can't answer that. There's two reasons why you can't answer that. First of all, it says Yershov, his heirs. Second of all, the din is it's koifer, it's an atonement. You don't pay koifer to someone who's his right. You pay koifer after the guy dies. So there's no way he gets himself. Yershov must mean Yershov. Rava says, Roy li tovei. So we see clearly the approach of the Gemara. The approach of Rava is there's no such thing as Kedushin for someone who's half an Eved. And when we say that you pay half to his heirs, really, it doesn't go anywhere. It would go to his heirs if he had heirs, but it doesn't go to anyone. Okay, so that's the answer to the Gemara. Rava says, just like someone who sanctifies was Makadesh, a half a woman, it doesn't work. So to a woman who's a half maidservant, doesn't work. You can't be Makadesh a woman who's half a maidservant. Okay, so this is the same thing. The same thing that Rava said, Rabba Baravuna Darshan. Rav Chisda said, how can you compare? Me dummy. In the first case, the woman, you didn't acquire her fully. Here, you're acquiring whatever you're able to acquire, the half of which is free. When Rabba Baravuna heard this, he was Oikim. He set up a drasha with a maturgaman, someone who's going to give over his words. It's talking about the Navi in Yeshaya. Rashi says, it's talking about Anshe Yushalayim, the end of the first base of Mikdash, they didn't have Torah anymore. And they were asking, Simla l'chol kotzin tialana. Do you have something, words of Torah that are fitting like a dress, you'll be like a kotzin. Things that are covered like a simla, things that you are fluent in, tell us, and you'll be a kotzin. That a person doesn't know the truth until he makes a mistake, and they embarrasses him, and then he understands it. That will be tachas yadecha. Then you'll understand. You'll understand it better when you make a mistake first. The meidmal divrei Tehillim kin nichshel b'hen. This is a very interesting drasha. Person doesn't fully understand Torah unless he first stumbles and he makes a mistake. Even though they said if you're mekadesh half a woman, you're not mekadeshes. Someone who's a half a shifcha and half bascheirin kiddushay kiddushin. My time also shir b'kinyane hochalei shir b'kinyane. The reason is shir b'kinyane erloi. Right? In a case of chetzi, in a case of woman, you're mekadesh half. You were able to mekadesh more. But here, lo shir b'kinyane. So he ultimately agreed with Rav Chisda. So the halacha is different than the first case. You're not able to be mekadesh half. But a chetzia shifa v'chetzia baschar, you could be mekadesh or fully. Whatever you're able to mekadesh, you're able to be mekadesh. Shishis disagrees. Amar Rav Sheshes Keshem Shem Mekadesh Chatzi Isha. Any Mekadesh is Chatz Chatzi Ship Chatzi Baschot Shis Chatzi Kedushin. It's not Kedushin, says Rav Sheshes. Person is going to whisper to you to say an answer. Eze Shifcha Charufa Zusha Chatzi Shifcha Chatzi Baschot Hamurasa Le'eved Ivri says that Shifcha Necharefes Leish. The pasuk tells us that she's half and she's Necharefes Leish. That means that she's engaged to an Eved Ivri. Amabasi Strusihi Amar Loch. Amar like Kalachitz Mishmal Shuhu. According to Rabbi Shmuel, it's talking about that she's fully a slave, and she's all. You're going to say that she's basis rusei lemaisach lemim meresim yichedes. It just means she's set aside for the evidivri, not mureses. So to us that we say it's talking about chetzi, it's only talking about yichedes, not mureses. Okay, so we have two dinim here actually, very interesting. By an eved, we say. Someone who's chetzi cannot be mekadesh a woman halfway. This is in Perek Daled Mechilkas Ishus Halacha Zayin. So let's see what the Rambam says. Let's go back. Yeah, here we go. Hilchas Ishus. Sefer Noshim Ishus. Perek Daled Halacha Yud Zayin. 1 second. Perek Daled.
I think we read that not too long ago with Rambam 3 a day.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here it is.
Now
Halacha Yud Zayin. Ve'ezo yishivcha charufa mura b'Torah zoi mi shechetze shivcha v'chetze b'aschon shekitche Eved Ivri. She was mekudesh by an Eved Ivri. Mi shechetze v'chetze b'nchon shekitche b'aschon is a Suffolk kedushin. Says Rashi. The Rambam says it's a Suffolk kedushin. If an Eved chetzi is mekadesh, it's a Suffolk kedushin. However, by shivcha charufa, you could be mekadesh chetzi, and we have in Perek Gimel halacha. Perek Gimel halacha tes. Let's see halacha tes. The Rambam says. So if you tell a woman, become Kaddish to half of me, it works. You'll be my wife together with another wife. One woman is not fit for two. If you're Mekudesh to me and another, then it's not Mekudesh. Okay, that's talking about a different case. But in the case of the Eved, according to the Rambam, you could be Mekadesh a Chetzi Shivcha. But an Eved Ivri, an Eved who's Chetzi Meshucher, he's only a Suffolk. I don't know what the difference is, honestly. Maybe the difference is there's a smach in the Torah for the Shivcha Charufa. Shivcha Charufa, she's half Hoftei Lo Niftasa, she's half Meshucher. She's able to be. We see that she's for an Eved, she's what's it called? Where's the pasuk? It's over here. So there we see clearly she could be half more rests. Now, obviously, Rav Sheshes disagrees. We just learned Rav Sheshes' opinion. But the first Rabba Barav Huna, together with Rav Chisda, that's what they hold. That's the way the Rambam passes halacha. Logically, maybe because there's a support in the pasuk. Logically, how would you differentiate even with the pasuk? I don't know. Okay, let's go further. Amar of Chisda, were 2 lines on the bottom of Daf Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. Chetzi shivcha v'chetzi baschert. And if you have someone who's a half a shivcha and half free, sheniskadcha l'Ruvain, she became mekudeshes to Ruvain, v'nishtacharo, and then she was freed. So we say she could be. I mean, according to Rav Chisda, you can't. Anyways, it doesn't really work. No. I'm sorry. Rav Chisda wanted to say that it does work. Sorry, Rav Chisda wanted to say that it does work, and then Rabbi Rav Huna said that it does work. Rav Sheshes said it doesn't work. So Rav Chisda says he takes it a step further. What if you're Mekadesh, a woman is half maidservant and half free, so she's Mekadesh, but then she was free. And then she became a Kadeshes for Shimon. Umeisu Shneim. And they both die. And they're brothers. Reuven never divorced her. So first she was half betrothed to Reuven, so to speak, because she was only half free. Then she was freed and she became betrothed to Shimon without divorcing Reuven, and they both die. Misyabemes lo Levi. She does Yibum with Levi. I don't consider it the wife of two dead. Rashi says, for example, if one brother dies and then the second brother does Mimer and he dies, she's not going to do Yibum to the third brother because she never left the Rishus of the first one and she's partially in the Rishus of the second one, so she can't do Yibum to the third brother. But here I'm not going to read it. Manavshach, no matter what. I Kedushin Reuven, the Reuven Kedushin. If we say the Kedushin of Reuven is Kedushin, so I guess he still has a suffix. Rav Chis is not sure. Kedushin, Shimon, Lav Kedushin. So Shimon didn't do anything. We Kedushin, the Shimon Kedushin, Kedushin, Lav Kedushin. If we're going to say Shimon's Kedushin is Kedushin, then Reuven's Kedushin wasn't a Kedushin. Itmar was stated. Oh, okay. Unfortunately, I guess we'll have to stop. We almost made it to the Mishnah. We're up to Itmar and Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis.